Right there, don't make the transition. Good to see you. Good to see you. Thanks for being here. Okay.
All right.
Oh.
Put it on.
Oh my gosh. Where we go?
we're opening the 4 new schools, and we think if we can get to the 630 bus drivers, we can then, support those 4 new schools and continue to provide the same level of service that we are today, where every student is assigned, every student that wants to ride is assigned a bus and has a ride to school. So that's number of bus drivers. In summary, special needs transportation is pretty much what we had, told you we thought it was going to look like at the beginning of the school year. We currently have 3,357 riders, and they are assigned to 230 contracted vehicles. We have 6 current contracts for contracted transportation, and 283 vehicles under contract. And again, we only have 238 on the road with routes assigned to them today, because our vendors are also in that same situation of trying to hire drivers. The good news is that since the beginning of the school year, they have been able to add 15 drivers amongst the 6 vendors. So we have added 15 routes since the beginning of the school year. You know also that we continue to offer families a stipend for those who are assigned contract transportation but choose to transport their own child. And we pay them $25 per day up to a maximum of $500 per month. And currently, we have 932 families that have opted in to that contract, and 604 of them have returned their contracts, and we are beginning, we're already issuing them monthly payments, or, they're to that point. And I know that I just got from staff, I think we just broke the $500,000 mark in payments for those stipends this current fiscal year.
What is the cost analysis for us as far as we're paying them a stipend? I understand certainly why. What would the cost have been if we had a full set of drivers? Like, are we ultimately saving money, or is it costing us more? Is there a break even?
That's a good question. It is a little bit less, actually, to pay the stipend than it is for contract transportation. And that's under the new 5-year contract that we have with contract transportation, because we increased those vendors' rates based on their new bid rates and that sort of thing. So we average about $7,000 per student cost on contract transportation, and we'll pay up to 10 months of $500 a month or $5,000 a year to a stipend parent.
Great. Thank you. And by the way, I clapped about the bus drivers. I know we're not where we want to go, but I'm a big believer that you got to celebrate small victories, and it's moving in the right direction. And, there's we hear plenty of critiques of our school system, so when we're moving in the right direction on something, I think it's important to uplift. So I want to just give, credit to your staff, to my colleagues who have supported the initiatives. I think it's good for the public to see that we're having some success there, and I hope it keeps going and that we get well over 6:30 and can reduce some other delays and stuff like that within the bus system. But it's good to see some results of the work we're doing. So, thank you.
What's up, Bob? It's a tough act to follow there. Maintenance department we're hiring as well. We've gotten some focused help from HR with recruiting, which has been very fruitful. So we're trying to fill in a lot of positions. I think one of them is going to be a chiller technician, which would be extremely beneficial for us. Other than that, we're doing our best with what we have to get things as it fails, but not much else out of maintenance.
I want to give a shout out to Lou.
Lou's not here today.
Yeah, so some compliments coming from principals that he's been in buildings, doing work, getting some things repaired. Joyner goes one school, I think they were out at Brentwood as well. Do you have any kind of numbers on how we're doing as far as the heating in schools and where we had any school closures recently? I'm not sure where, more kind of across the county.
We haven't had, we haven't had a lot of closures recently. I think we're trying to keep from consecutive days of closure. You know, if we have a cold thing in the morning where we're not going to catch up, the call has been made to send kids home. But we've also had, you know, some instances where the staff has been a little bit more understanding when the maintenance department shows up and they're ready to keep the kids in the building, and we're going to do what we can to keep them there also, which has been very helpful. You know, some of the colder days is a little bit tougher to do that. The call gets made. But we haven't had like a systematic, hey, this building's going to have the same problem for a few days. We've been able to kind of remedy it and keep them in the building the next day. So it's kind of, I feel like it's setting the bar a little bit low. I'd like to keep everybody in there every day, but we're doing our best to make sure that it's not going to affect any one group of people consecutive days.
Questions? Ms. Rice?
Well, I'm happy to hear the wins that we have, which are really, really great to hear. So I say cheers, hurrah for that. Want to thank you guys for the continued dedication that you keep trying to do to keep our students in school, which is very important. I would like to share that I don't know if it's not, maybe not getting to you or being informed, but we do have some schools, like you said, teachers or the school is trying to still keep the students in school, but I've had direct reports and things like that that's been sent to me where school classrooms are like 66 degrees inside for longer than days and months. And so I know that there's been some champion efforts of trying to get it resolved. And in some instances, we're still not getting it resolved, but it's just a strong testament to the amazing principals or in staff who are running our schools. And students, I have to really say the students who are being very progressive about their own education and realize while they would like to go home, they need to get this work done. However, for their well-being, it's just not good that they're in classrooms that are in 60-degree weather and it's happening on a consistent basis and everything. But we're very supportive of the work that you all are trying to do, continuing to support and hoping for championing you guys with doing some innovative thought processes around how to fix some of the things that can be fixed. So I just wanted to share, those are some challenges, but yet we still got some wins at the same time.
Yeah, I appreciate that. We are struggling to get to all like the mobile units and modular units and things like that, individual classrooms that have their own HVAC system. Those are some of the ones that stay down for a little while because we're trying to get boilers and pull schools up. So we're working to try and get vendors out there and our staff out there as quickly as we can, but our response time isn't, it's not acceptable to us either. We'd like to be there a lot faster if we could.
Thanks so
To
much.
piggyback on her point, when we hear about it, where should we send our emails? Because I've been sending them generally to Mr. Strickland over in the corner, but should we CC you on it or send it to you? Who's the best person to send it directly to while CCing the head of facilities?
You know, Mark does a really good job of getting things to me. I'd like for him to be in the loop, you know, first point of contact.
That works. Yeah.
And like I said, he's happy to just forward on whatever comments or get it to where it's got to go. But that'd be great.
And just as a point of process, we always ask, and if you all have the opportunity, we'd ask you as well, if you do hear anything, just make sure that they have done a work order, because that's how we track stuff. And 8 times out of 10, work orders are already in, but it doesn't do any good to call you all, and you all call us if we don't have a work order, because we've got to place it in the rack to be done.
Can I have a point of
Absolutely,
clarity,
yeah.
Chair? I'm trying to make sure I understand. Are you saying you're not getting work orders?
No, I'm saying, if you talk to a school or someone, please make sure, even if it's a teacher, make sure they have gone through the process of letting the school know so that they can put in the work order.
We'd like the process, we'd like we'd like for the work orders not to have to come through board members as the first step, or come through chiefs as the first step. If they let us know and we create a work order, it puts our people in process. So if it's an emergency, we have staff already moving that way. A lot of principals will report to their area superintendent, hey, I've called maintenance and this is what's going on. I don't want them to not inform you. I don't have any problem with that. But by the time it goes through everybody else's email box, somebody could have already been on the way. And that's
I agree.
That's why we're trying to make sure that they're telling us through the front door, and then as we get the information through everybody else, at least somebody's already in process.
I agree. So what I would like to say is, to go back to what you asked, once the process has been followed, and typically the emails that I'm getting, the process was followed. So what would you like for us to do once the process has been followed? That was their first chain of response. I think our principals do a very great job with submitting the work request first. And in my experiences, I can't speak for all the other districts, but my experiences has been that's their last line of defense of saying, hey, I have placed this work order. So it's just really about a point of clarity, not casting blame, but just asking for a point of clarity. Once they have gone through that process and they happen to send it to us, what would you like for us to do? Is that the same thing you're asking? I'm not sure.
Sure. Yeah, I prefer you still pass it through Mr. Strickland.
Okay.
And he'll
Yeah,
get to
I
me.
would say continue that same process. I think you guys do a really good job of making sure it gets to the right person, but if in those instances, a person is say, I have followed the process and blah, 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 then that's when you can actually have that information shared, so Nate or Mark or someone at that level can actually look and see if the principal has followed the process, then the follow-through really has been at the district level, and that's something that they can address directly. So hopefully if they reach out to you and they follow the process, that will be an indication to leadership that we need to make sure these things are being addressed. Plenty of times, people do put things in, and the process may not go through, but many times there's a lot of fidelity. So if you recognize that, let us know, and then they can do the follow-up.
Any other questions? Thank you very much. And by the way, when future operations update, put 10 minutes, because it's never 5 minutes, ever. I'm certain that I'm about to get a motion to approve the minutes from the last time we were here from somebody.
Second.
Chair Haggy, all in favor of approving the minutes? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Approved, and we are on to transportation update with, are you coming up to this too?
Oh, I think my team is there.
Oh,
Ready to
okay.
roll.
Rock and roll.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Dr. Taylor Board, it's great to come back and provide a high-level update to the yellow bus notification updates process and site that we built for the district. As we started in earnest when we met with you guys 3 months short of a year ago when we met. And it's always great to come back and provide updates. I am Jeff Alford. I am Senior Director of Enterprise Applications, and with me I have, I'll let her introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Megan Maurer. I'm a senior admin on the Digital Resources team in technology.
And we, of course, have the great Bob Steinbuilder with us as well. And this thing's not working, if you don't mind hitting the button. So, after we met with you guys, we basically conceptually laid out the plan to move this thing forward. To date, at that time, we actually implemented a new application forward-facing, which is available on the Wake County website. Anybody can get to this website to see the updates in real time. We also created unique URLs per school site that actually goes to their pertinent data for their updates for that school. And those can be saved on any device. This site works on any device that you have, it's responsive. And then, of course, we implemented, and this is the biggest part of this, is the family notifications that actually go through School Messenger and provide the update of the actual event. So if it's 20 minutes late, 30 minutes late, those types of things. And we'll get into some of those numbers in a minute. And we also provided enhanced reporting. every single entry that is done by the Transportation Department is captured. And there's a lot of data elements on each of those entities, so we actually have reporting so we can kind of see where things are. And we'll get into some high-level data here in just a minute. So the implementation, we started with 2 elementary schools in April. We expanded that to 7 middle schools, 7 middle and high schools in May. And that really, we were able to really test the routes that serve multiple schools and to get through the logistics of that. And then we went live. We hit our target. We told you guys back almost a year ago that we were going to hit July 1st, and we did in fact do so. We did so, and we went into production July 1st. And I'm going to turn it over to Megan to talk about some of the numbers.
Hi. So we are never a quiet district. We send tons of messages. And it was so nice to see how many messages we sent that were only transportation related. So, I mean, I won't go through the numbers exactly, but you can see, you know, September, right, when all the schools were back in session, you can tell that the bus riders were working out with the new bus routes, right? There were some delays, but what I loved to see was that October, November, December is a shorter month, but it's starting to go down. So, you know, fewer students are being notified, being impacted, but parents seem to love this. I have heard personal feedback from, you know, friends of mine and coworkers. They're like, this is a game changer. We don't have to worry about kids standing out in the cold waiting for their bus any longer. So I see it as a huge win. Jeff touched on this a little bit, but we are sending messages on 2 different scenarios. So your bus is X number of minutes late or behind schedule. So we're doing it in increments 20, 35, 45, and 60. Or your bus doesn't have a driver today and you need to provide your own transportation. And then we have messages that can be sent if the situation changes. Like, oh, please disregard that previous message that you received. You do have a driver, and you will receive transportation today. Another great benefit of this process is that messages are sent in both English and Spanish, and that is determined on the parent's preference in PowerSchool. So it's automatically translated to Spanish for those Spanish-speaking families. I'm always asked, what about Here Comes the Bus? Is this replacing Here Comes the Bus? And the answer is no. Of course, it is an addition to Here Comes the Bus. So parents can still check their app and see where the bus is, but they are just getting that proactive message to let them know ahead of time. All of our messaging links back to Here Comes the Bus, so we're really trying to promote that tool to families. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the data. But first, any questions on this?
Dr. Yang, first.
So do you get an immediate feedback report if a message did not go through to the parents?
We do not through our system. I pull reports to make sure that the system is working. The job complete reports in School Messenger, if we needed to double check to make sure that messages are successful, actually show a status of, you know, the message was delivered, the message was opened, or if they're receiving incorrect contact information where the parent could not be contacted. But the beauty of using School Messenger is that we are using the data that is provided from PowerSchool. It's also the system that we use for our community newsletters, attendance calls, and then how the principals communicate with families. So hopefully parents know that they're not being contacted because they aren't receiving any of our messages, and they can work with the school to make sure that their contact information is up to date.
Is there interruption for the driver in the case where the bus is late? Is that involving the driver to keep y'all up to speed, or is it all done by you tracking where the bus is?
I don't know what you guys are after.
So the
Do you
notification...
understand my question?
I
Yeah.
think so, but if I don't hit
Yeah, go
on it, then
ahead.
please redirect me. But we have our, our 22 district offices across, and so they are reporting, and they're adding to the notification system as they're working their operations, getting buses off the lot and that sort of thing in the morning. So they are posting the initial, anything's running late or there's no driver.
Gotcha.
And then they will also get feedback from the drivers about, hey, I'm stuck in traffic here, I think I'm going to be more than 20 minutes late. So, we have that two-way communication, so then we'll post either a new bus that's running late, or we'll update something that may have changed the status of something we had already posted. I think to answer your question, everything is centralized at that district office as far as the information going into the system.
Follow-up. So I know our drivers are not texting and driving, but like, in the case where you've got the driver, but there was some hiccup somewhere where they're running late, but they're not broken down, they're safely alerting their supervisor, their district lead, when they're still in stationary, I'm back on track or something, like, or I'm not as far behind as I thought, or something of that nature.
The bus will not be in motion
Right.
at the time that they are on the phone. Yes,
Okay.
they completely understand, that's illegal, and it's a serious reprimand from an HR perspective.
Sure.
They aren't going to risk that and the safety of the students, so.
Great, thank you.
So I want to say that I am so thankful for make sure I'm saying the right name, get my notes right. It's my son uses it, Here Comes the Bus. Wonderful. I think it works really great. I always share lived experience and how it really works as a parent as well that sits on the board, and as a kid who has a chronic illness who literally cannot be outside in cold weather for over 5 or 10 minutes of time. It works very well. When I'm like, you're going to miss this bus, and he's like, bus says it's 10 minutes away. You're not supposed to be here, but it's still, at least he knows, we know, and he's not standing outside, to you guys' point, in the cold. So I think those are some things that you guys have really nailed and really doing right, and I want to celebrate and share that it really does help and work with families who are really experiencing these bus times and things of that nature. But yeah, I just really wanted to say that tool works, and it was thanks for sharing that. It's two different systems working, because that was my question I was about to ask, and you answered it when I was like, oh, is this going to replace Here Comes the Bus thing? Because it really works, and it's very helpful, very helpful.
Thank you.
So I think we had this conversation 5 minutes after you got here. I brought this up to you. And so well done on executing this and rolling it out. I think this is another big win. During my first term early on, I got emails, hey, the bus isn't here. How do I find out? And since this has been out, I have gotten nothing. So I think it's a real testament to the work y'all are doing. I have a couple of questions, though. So one, we use Power School. We're transitioning from Power School. We're feeling good that it's going to be seamless for this particular application.
We are, yes.
Okay, so I needed to hear. Two other questions. So when they send a notice, hey, the bus is going to be 20 minutes late, I'm assuming at that point, even if the bus gets there 5 minutes earlier than the notice, they have to wait to give everybody a chance to, if I've got a 7 o'clock and they say 20 minutes late, I can get out there at 7:18 and make the bus. Is that kind of how it's working?
Yes, the bus driver will know what's been posted.
Okay.
They know what time, they know how far ahead they are in the schedule. So we are not going to leave students behind.
Right. And so, and I'm asking this because it was pretty cold this morning. And so we have some of these days, amazingly still. And we have a 20-minute. How many, do we have a sense, and I don't need the answer right now, but how many buses are getting there in that 10 to 19 minute late mark where maybe when it's going to be single digits or teens, we say, we have like a 10-minute notice. I mean, it's a big difference when it's 60 degrees out, you're, kids are in T-shirts and shorts in like 50-degree weather, but when it's in the teens, have we kind of given any of that some thought, and do we have the data on those number of buses?
So currently, it's event-driven upon an occurrence. So if I know and I'm putting in an entry, the bus is going to be 20 minutes late, then I will enter that and then hit send. Everything that is captured in the reporting tool is based off of those events. Now, with that said, it is evolving, and we're taking feedback from you guys to try to enhance the reporting capabilities. And if we need to add functionality or capture points to add to or complement the data that we already have, we certainly are open to that.
I think I would love to kind of see it, and really specifically 4 days like this morning, where
Yeah.
it is really cold,
It was.
and we maybe need to do a modification, hey, it's 10 minutes late, because, for obvious reasons. But in general, as a data-driven county and school system, I would be interested in kind of getting those numbers to see, just for general knowledge base, to see if we got to make any adjustments.
Yeah, and I think that's a great suggestion. And that's where, the Here Comes the Bus application is a great tool.
For sure.
To work in, alongside the notification system. So if we tell you 20 minutes late,
Yeah.
I think most families and students are starting to track that bus on the Here Comes the Bus app.
Right.
So I really think that's the tool to keep them from standing out in the cold too long, but I agree with you, it'd be good to see the data on how many of these events are within the 10 to 20 minutes and how many are
Yeah.
20, 30, that sort of thing.
Not for today, but because we're talking about the bus and the app, is just reminding me about the new ID cards you were going to have for the younger children. I don't think it was for all grade levels, but at some point, can we get an update on that? I think you did a pilot. Did I miss an update about that?
They were going to do a pilot. Do you want to give a...
Yeah, just briefly.
I don't mean to derail the
No,
agenda.
this is totally fine.
We did not do a pilot, but we have not given up on the idea
Okay,
and the
okay.
technology. We still think it's a very useful technology, especially as we build efficiencies. We are gaining bus drivers, but we still are very reliant on being very efficient with our resources, and that's a tool that would help us even more. So,
That's fine. If we could just circle back to that, it's not like another meeting.
Absolutely, yeah. Any other questions?
I mean, only just to add, I know that there were some other departments too that had some interest in that ID card and have to be used for a lot of different student services. So whether it comes to transportation or student achievement or some other committee, it'd be great to get the update.
Yeah.
But I know like Dr. Robinson's team was looking at it too, and
Yep.
a few other areas.
I think you have them continue, you have another question, they have more numbers too, so, but if you have a question, go ahead.
No question. It was concerning what we were sharing. Go keep going.
Okay.
Yeah, we were just going to provide you a review and some of the data points that we capture high level. This data set here is the top 15 schools in terms of occurrence, actual events that were tracked. And it shows you a good idea of the amount of numbers that we have per school in the top 15 here. And within that number, you have, and Bob can add to, all of your events are in those numbers, the 20 minutes, the 30 minutes, the no driver, all of the events are encompassed in the numbers that you see here. Here's a breakdown of the same numbers, but morning routes, afternoon routes, so AM and PM. I was actually surprised to see the number of PM versus AM. I would have thought that the AM would have been a little bit higher, but with talking with Bob, they seem to be right there. So this is a breakdown. So your PM numbers are the blue, and then the orangish color is the AM.
Do those numbers, and maybe this is a Glenn question since he's standing over there, do those numbers kind of feeder patterns, like, hey, the bus was late at the high school, and therefore it's late at the middle school, and therefore it's late at the,
We have seen that,
okay.
yes.
A lot of the routes serve the same schools, so you will see a pattern there.
I know, but looked like he was not paying attention, so I just didn't. I'm kidding. But he is the expert on feeder patterns, and he could look and maybe identify one pretty quickly, and so.
Appreciate the support.
Yeah.
So I'm very thankful for this data that you guys have laid out, and it shows a very clear pattern. The top 15 schools that are particularly affected are all schools in District 4 and District 2. So I really would like to better understand why is it these schools are mostly impacted? Why is this not? So what's going on with the busing system only in these impacts? I think it's a message that has been shared across this board table on numerous occasions, and looking at equities, looking at the data when it concerns student achievement. We see that data. We clearly know a lot of times the families in those schools, if something's late or if the bus is missed, they can't get their children to school. We're seeing this impact, like I said, in our academics, achievement and performances. And with knowing that and understanding that, what is the plan moving forward from 25-26 school year to cause a decrease in these schools and make them equitable across the county? Because this data clearly shares and states everything I've been saying since I've sat at this table. Ms. Johnson-Hostler has advocated for at this table, and now we clearly have the data that completely shares it is those schools of those districts who have the most impact.
So I think the follow-up is why? Like, why is East Gardner Middle, and actually, Mr. Carosa, where does East Gardner flow into for high school?
Gardner High or South Gardner.
Okay. It's interesting that they're not out there, given how high that number is. So, like, when you have those very high numbers,
Yeah.
that,
Oh, sorry, but I mean, like, Enlow High School has buses running from all over the county, right?
Yep.
Carnage has buses that run from all over the county. Ligon has buses that run from all over the county. And so, that does not explain or justify anything at like Creech Road or Vance or any of those schools. But I was just wondering if, like, the distance from the school and the number of routes might impact the number of delays.
So if you say that, then what about the fact that we've hired X amount of, since we're looking at the data, if we said we've hired X amount of bus drivers, and I've asked that question about when we've hired these bus drivers, where are you actually sending them? And if we're saying that since August of last year, or from, the quarter of August to December, these are the most impacted, I'm sure they were still impacted before that passed, this previous quarter that we're looking at, then where were those bus drivers assigned? If in fact the disparity is here, where are we putting the new bus drivers at, if that's what we're doing?
I'd like to hear that.
So, yeah.
So one of the things I would say is that we absolutely need to go back and do more disaggregation beyond the data that we see here. And so we always start out with the number of routes that we need. And then there are going to be vacancies based on those routes. There are going to be call-ins based on those routes. And so if we've identified the number, then we have the ability to go back and say that at East Garner Middle, even though we have the higher drivers, we've had this level of call-ins, or we have this level of vacancies. I think all of those things are going to impact. So that means that when we look at an area that is really high needs, there may be something else that we need to do to incentivize drivers to be on those routes. And so I know, for example, on Fridays, the call-in rate can be much higher, and it may be these areas that are impacted. But that's absolutely something that I want to see us to work towards, is reducing these numbers. Because when I looked, I said, wow, East Garner's way up there. And so that is an issue, but it's about doing even more detailed disaggregation and knowing and understanding what those patterns are beyond what we see here. But I think you're asking the right question.
Did you go backwards?
Go ahead,
Yeah, so just a couple of thoughts, and I don't want to minimize the, the
Right.
thought, and believe me, we are aware of the data and what it looks like, and when we look at it, we see the same thing initially, and as Dr. Taylor alluded to, there's a lot of information yet behind these high-level numbers. But things that I can tell you that won't totally explain why these hit, this chart, but if we look at Enloe High School, as Mr. Haggerty said, those are countywide magnet schools. We have Carnegie and Ligon and the early college academies, for example, that ride these buses. There are a lot of things happening with these buses, and I want to remind everybody that these are not necessarily late to school buses. These are buses that are delayed, running behind schedule. Things that we can do to make certain that they get to school on time is push those pickup times back so that we leave ourselves some room to get them to school on time. So this data does not reflect what's actually late to school. It's an indicator, and we use it as such, but we manage late to school buses differently than this process. So I do want to make certain that, everybody does understand that. And so when I look at this data, and we've gone over it with Mr. Strickland, we took the first 40 days of school, and we totally blew this data apart, and we looked to see at our low-performing Title I schools, and is there more frequency of being late to those schools than other schools? And what we found in that first 40 days of data, there wasn't a big difference. And that's not to say that we don't still need to focus on those Title I schools. We know we do. But I want you to know that we are looking at the data. We're going to do the same thing for the second 40 days of school, and we'll look to see if we've improved on that data. So after the initial review, I got with my team and I said, look, here's the data. We went over it thoroughly. We have it, we have this broken down by much smaller groups to manage, different schools and different runs, and they're focused on those schools. So when we talk about hiring new bus drivers, are we applying those resources to where we need to apply them when we can, and we don't have something on fire somewhere else, then we apply those resources to those schools so that we can improve that. So we are very aware, and we're monitoring that data, and we want to see improvement there.
So I think the missing data right now for this is how many of these are leading to being late to school. I think that is a critical piece that we need to see as a board during, whether it's in February or March at the facilities update, so we can compare, okay, they're late to a bus pickup, and 20 minutes is a lot, so those are high numbers. But they're not late to school, or maybe it coincides that there are a lot of kids getting to East Gardner Middle late, in which case, what are we doing about it, kind of thing. So I think that's something I can safely speak on behalf of my colleagues that we need to see.
Yeah, and just if I could, as part of my update, I was going to share that we manage this data a little bit differently than what you're looking at. And I took just the school days in the month of November, and I looked at that. And, we had, on average, 24 late runs per morning. Okay, 24 out of 1,800. Okay, late runs.
Like getting to school.
Getting to school late, okay? So that's how this data kind of, folds into actually being late. We had 31 late runs to the school in the afternoon. That's arriving more than 40 minutes after the bell rings in the afternoon. Again, that's out of 1,800 PM runs. And so the percentages are very low. And I think overall that's good. When we had 900 bus drivers, these numbers didn't look really much better than this.
Right.
This is around a 2% late. And if we were between 1% and 2%, when we had 900 bus drivers, we always felt like we were doing good because things are going to happen. But I don't want to downplay the fact that we have to focus on, all schools and making certain that, we're paying attention to those Title I schools and all of that. So, and if I could say that we average a quarter of a percent when it came to uncovered runs per day during the month of November. So I just wanted to dissect that 1 month to pull those numbers out to give you an idea of, I think, to me, it's good data, it looks good when you look at averages and that sort of thing, but we dive deeper into the detail to know where it's at as well.
And I think another, speaking on behalf of my colleagues, that we want to see a plan on, in the next, 2-3 months, how those numbers come down, like the East Gardner number. What's going to be done to bring that number down? Because if you go to the next slide, which most of us have done already, we see a bunch of the eastern and southern numbers total. So we have the data now. To Ms. Rice's point, this has been talked about. So now we need to see a plan, and we need to see it come before the facilities committee sometime, preferably this school year. Dr. Daniel?
The quick question, are the buses usually utilized for the same route for, weeks on end, or you guys switch them around, rotate them? I'm just curious about like the usage, mileage-wise, or, of these buses on one route versus another. Is there some kind of difference,
The physical bus is assigned to the route for the entire year.
Okay.
And it comes out of rotation for service and those sorts of things, but we don't typically change the route. And that's so that students get familiar with their bus and all of those sorts of things. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, so I just raised that question of whether, the differential utilization of those buses in terms of drive miles driven has anything to do with some of the things that we're seeing. But, that's something that we'll have to dive into, right?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's more, mileage is more around strategizing on when we can get the bus replaced.
Sure, yeah, but it's also
By the
breakdowns
states,
and things like that.
so that we stay in the newest fleet that we can stay in, so.
Mr. Sumner, can I get you to go back one slide? This is just a question of my ignorance. I saw Wake Early College of Health and Sciences, Connections Academy, Longview. I know that, we have an early college in my district. I don't believe it has bus service. So is this, do our early colleges and alternative schools have bus service? And is it just some of them or all of them, or?
Yeah, they do have bus service. They ride, from all over with the Enloe buses. They come into Enloe and we shuttle them to these different, to the early colleges and Connections and all of that, yes.
Okay. Just so if an early college parent has told me they don't have bus service, I should just route them to you?
Sure.
Okay.
Or Glenn.
Or Glenn. All right, thank you, I appreciate it. Sorry, it was related but a little off topic, I apologize.
I think this is the last slide, right? Go ahead. If there's anything else, otherwise, we've been asking questions anyways.
Yeah, this just it demonstrates the regional breakdown in 4 quadrants of the whole entire district.
Final thoughts, Ms. Rice?
No, I think,
We've asked for a plan.
yes.
Yeah, and I think it's great. I really appreciate that we have this data now.
Yeah.
And I will continue to use it to make the improvements that are long overdue. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, now the fun is going to begin. I've been having fun all this whole meeting now.
But I swear, I've had folks.
No, but I do have to say, when he shared about
Cybersecurity. Thank you.
over 1,800 routes, and this is where we are, I think that does deserve to be celebrated. But we're looking at a shrinking number. Let's look at the disparity within that shrinking number.
So now I got to go to you.
Mark, you coming?
I'll be back.
Sorry, yeah.
Mark, are you now coming to the table for this one?
Yes, I am.
All right. So, the next topic is the 20-year facility plan roundtable discussion, and we kind of kicked this off a little bit at the board retreat, and I'll just give a little bit of my own bringing this up to Mr. Strickland and Dr. Taylor. When Ms. Mahaffey and I were doing some work on the sustainability policy, we visited North Carolina State University and got a nice tour, and we talked about it, and they have this wonderful, 20-year master's facility plan. And over the course of being on this board for the last 2 years, we'll have projects, whether, a real estate or a transportation hub or a place for professional development, whatever it is, it kind of comes before the board as almost a one-off, which can be fine to some degree, but it's hard to make a decision less about school land banking than some of the transportation or where, the Piney Plains project or any number of items. And so having discussions with Dr. Taylor about how do we create a document that helps the board make decisions to have a vision for where we're going to be in, let's see, what's 2045. Be above ground, hopefully, but where we're going to go and how we can use that document for our governance. And I've talked to Dr. Taylor about this, and I'm going to let him kick it off, and then I'm going to kind of see if Chair Haggerty, who has sat in this seat before, has some thoughts, and then kind of open it up to a general discussion of what is this going to look like.
So first of all, thank you, Mr. Hersey, for the chance to give some context. What I will say is that forward thinking on a 20-year plan, of whatever number you may decide, is something that has always been useful for me. I don't often talk about the previous districts where I served, but in each of those instances as a district level administrator, it was about what we wanted to see for a district from a facilities perspective far out in front. And so what I was able to do is to go into those districts, look at the current situation, know and understand the economic landscape, and then say that as a district, this is what we need to have in place 11 or 12 years from now. And so being in Wake County, I was actually able to look back and see much of that come to fruition. I can tell you that when you begin to talk about a 20-year plan, that certainly involves people like the commissioners. They will see that, and from their perspective, it is about what we are asking for. But more importantly, it is about how we plan diligently about how we use the resources that we're going to ask for. And I can tell you that that foresight was so much appreciated after my exit in both of those districts. And that's why I was excited about this process. So it is about a legacy that we're going to leave behind. I hate that Mr. Hershey put it into terms of 20 years from now, because I'll be 77, so I'm hoping to still be around. But when I think about the 20-year facility plan, it really is about making sure we understand our current facility issues and our needs. What is the availability of facility resources that's going to be always driving that. But more importantly, the data-driven aspect of what we want to do, be able to do, looking at not only current data, but future and projected data as it relates to growth. And so we know that in this community, that's more important than ever, because we are fast growing, and we do have the opportunity to do a long-range look and then be able to pivot every 5 or so years. But at the end of the day, it is about identifying the necessary resources that are going to be needed. And that is, I think, where we all agree, the biggest part of our responsibility is to make sure that our public is aware of the kind of resources we may need as we look forward. I know the advantages of it is that it helps us provide a view of what the far future looks like. and at the end of the day, making the necessary changes and pivots when we need to. And so with that, what we want to be able to do is to make sure that we have really clear and direct input from the board about what it is that you think about when it comes to a 20-year plan. That's what we want to be able to do today, is get feedback from the facilities committee so that when administration begins to draft a 20-year plan, we are able to take the insight that the board has provided, but then do the work of developing a plan that is going to be a roadmap. And ultimately, it is about long-range plan with specific thoughts about the first 5 years, and then the idea of the pivot and add to that. So with that, I will turn it back and we will begin this discussion.
And before I send it to Chair Harity for any thoughts, a big part of this for me is we're going to have turnover on the board, on the staff. 10 years from now, none of us could be here. And so how do we ensure that with all the development going on, that people aren't coming in and having to reinvent the wheel? I mean, we have the CIP, which is an outstanding part of this. And hopefully that continues when we're all not here. But that's been a part of it, because sometimes somebody has left and maybe something has fallen through the cracks. And to me, as a board member, that I don't think that should be the case. But Chair Haggerty.
Thank you, Sam. So, I think this is a wonderful idea, and I really want to thank Sam for lifting this up and being a champion on it. For board members who've been around a little bit longer, like Lindsay and I, talking to Sam about this is something that we've always seen as sort of a need. And to give you a little context, if you look at our CIP program, and you look at the program we use for identifying the needs for school buildings, we have a very organized and very data-driven approach. We can look at the heat maps, we can see the circles for where we think the population will support a new school. We can provide, like the real estate department, target areas where we need to go out and look. And we can help, voters, constituents understand the areas of high growth where schools should be, and talk to our county commissioners about it, and help plan for, future bond referendum. But what we run into is, what about all of those property and real estate needs that are outside of schools? So for example, we know that with a school district this large, we have administrative operations, maintenance operations, and just in the course of me being on the board, just sitting here, I came up with like 4 different properties that maybe we've purchased or maybe that we've taken out of service as a school, where so many people have come to us with different ideas, but as individual board members, we don't know what the plan is for them. We don't know, and then sometimes talking with staff, we might hear, well, we've got Plan A or we've got Plan B. And the idea that even if we're not committing to a plan of action, that at least we have an idea or a vision for some of these spaces would just be very, very helpful. I look at, just to give you a couple items, we have the Piney Plains facility. And, we talked about using this for one purpose originally. And, because of some complications, we've looked at alternative purposes. But that's when board members hear, well, maybe there's a need for additional educational space for one of our specialty or alternative schools. Maybe there's a need for more professional development space. Maybe we need more space for transportation, right? And so then the thought is, all right, well, if we have these needs, what are we looking at? How do we meet them? We have our Capitol Boulevard site, which if I get any questions from other elected officials, more often than that site, I'm not quite sure what it would be, asking us, can we use this for like a shelter? Can we use this for different human services reasons? I've always heard that we were holding that as a potential high school site, but we're currently using it to house nonprofit partners. Is that something, as we've talked about, the potential for workforce housing or staff housing? It could be a very central location for that. Fuquay Varina Middle School. After Capitol Boulevard, that's the second most common site that people come to me all the time with, well, what if we use that for like a specialty school or administrative space. I know that we've been in talks, for a new DMV location, working with the town, the county, and the North Carolina Department of Transportation. The Rock Quarry Road facility, we frequently hear about the needs for capital improvements and upgrades at that site. The need for more satellite space, where we pull everybody into Cary, but as large a county as we are, would there be value to being able to have student services that could be offered, like in northeastern or southeastern Wake County, either where there's a large physical difference, or maybe you have people that live in a more concentrated central area that can take mass transit to a school site that they couldn't take all the way out here. So, and those are just 4 or 5 examples. So I don't want anyone to think that we're asking to recreate the wheel.
Right.
Because we know what we do for our school sites, but it's these other areas that I think of sometimes, I don't know how you want to describe it, we don't know, I don't know that we have a clear vision for. And so that's what I'm hoping we can get out of it.
I think about like when I'm looking for a house hunting, and I look at, this house looks great, and there's a space here. I don't know what to do with it. We're gonna do something with it. But once I move into it, it's like, oh, okay, it really didn't meet my needs, or didn't do what I really wanted to do. And so, I think having this kind of plan would help us to have a direction of, okay, this is what our needs are. Identify what our needs are first, and then fit those decisions based on the needs that we have already identified. You understand?
I was getting to you. I was just seeing if any other board.
So,
Go ahead.
sometimes, but there are wants and needs.
Right.
And sometimes wants end up turning into needs, based on how we grow and what things we have to pursue down the road. So several staff departments have had some informal meetings on this already to generate some ideas, kind of a thought process. So one of the things I might would offer up is staff, let all of us look at some big picture things. Some general direction ideas. One of the things I learned working for another company years ago was find out what you don't want, and then that helps you determine what you do want. And so as we look at those big picture things, we sift through and figure out what part of that future is most appropriate for where we want to go. And as we pare that down and bring it to you all for further direction, we can further refine it and get to something that won't be specific, but it will give us a good general direction of where we want to plan to go to. And so you've mentioned, Mr. Haggerty, several areas that we've all been talking about. But there are many others that we have discussed internally that could and would eventually help us to be better operationally. We could provide better service. We could be more efficient. I think we all have to realize and understand we may not can afford to do everything we want to do, and that's why I think the efficiency part comes in. We really got to be efficient in what we decide we want to do. But it's an exciting opportunity to plan and think forward in the future. And so we'd like to bring that at some point in time in some fashion, that bigger picture vision, and let you all pare it down or provide some thoughts and comments.
And I actually agree with that. I actually want, I would love to have these things for transportation or for, what do we do with swing spaces? Here's what we want to do with, everything, be aspirational, this is what we want to do. And then, as you said, kind of bring it in, okay, we would love to do this, but we can't. It's just a little too much. How do we pare it down a little bit? But I want us to dream big. I would like to see us figure out a way to make sure we get a lot of staff feedback, from all departments, student assignment weighing in, academics weighing in.
I'm worried about talking athletics. That's the one that worries me.
Well, yeah,
But we will.
But I mean, that's, but that's part of it too, though, like, because we've run into that recently in a build where we had to do athletics in different areas. And so having that also, I would think, some scenarios of, I think part of this too is getting into hiring. Hey, here's our 20-year plan. We want to do all these projects. Here's what we're going to need to really accomplish those projects as far as staffing goes.
Project managers.
Yes, 100%. I'd like to see us develop a way in this to have community feedback, and I know Dr. Taylor has his advisory group, and maybe that's a part of what this is, to just kind of review and get that buy-in, because we are going to be making asks of the community. And, letting our principals and our area superintendents and all the, just full vision project of buying in and creating a path to being as great as we can be, and then kind of figuring out what is, to your point, okay, now here's our dreams, what can we try to, where do we go and develop? And I think this is a year-long at least project to put together, not, hey, bring this to February facilities meeting.
I love everything that I'm hearing. I do want to encourage us when you talk about expansion, hiring, that I just want to encourage the team here that when you look at your internal practices and internal conversations, that you consider, because the dynamics are so complex, let's see if we can, in your hiring processes, look at things maybe through a different lens or perspective of people that might can bring something a little bit different than what you already have inside internally, and expand that lens of what it's actually going to look like for some complex situations that we're coming with. Because I hear you all's challenges that you're having and the good work that you're really trying to produce, but it's usually wrapped around the manpower, it's wrapped around the HR practices within that. And so I've just seen some really great inspirational documentary pieces and stuff that's come across where it's, what is it, I'm pulling deep, like some Hidden Figures type of stuff, of 6 XXX type of things. And so I think we need to expand our thought processes around a lens of that thinking, of that scope, as we look at doing projects that are so big that we still seem to have a challenge with getting completed or getting the outcomes that we're looking at. So I think we just need to, I just want to encourage us, when whoever's doing what, and then those hiring processes, that we look at some lenses around those models.
And I can tell you that, that is what I call the residual effect of this kind of planning. So we begin to think about staffing that we might need to support district initiatives, then that may cause us to have those external conversations with partners that can actually fill that void. I know that before we had a situation in the community where the volunteer fire departments didn't have the staffing that they needed. And so that ended in a firefighter academy at the high schools that absolutely filled the void for the community. And so that absolutely is what I see as a residual effect. And so this work, I know, is important because of the rapid growth in Wake County. And so it is very important that we not only talk about what we will look like 20 years from now. What I can tell you is that if you go back to 1990, had anybody anticipated the growth in Wake County would be the way it is now. I know around that time, Wake County schools weren't much bigger than Cumberland County schools, maybe 14 high schools. Well, in a relatively short amount of time, we've grown really fast. And so I don't anticipate this kind of growth to slow over the next 20 years. And so that means for a community, we've got to think long and hard about what the landscape needs to look like 20 years from now, understanding that money that we have today won't be as far tomorrow. I remember a $100 million bond in Cumberland County. Like, wow, $100 million. Can't build one high school with that now. And so that is where keeping the public informed of what we see, what the trends are, so they can prepare for that too. I mean, this is going to be as important to the community as it is for the school district.
Yeah, so you know, I'm glad that we don't have to deal with the issues of like our decision of closing a particular school. You know, in my brief time on school board, having to interview, you know, Dr. Taylor and the other candidates, and understanding the fact that there are other places where we have to deal with, you know, school closures. However, at the same time, we are dealing with a shifting of population within our county, and so that's something that we, you know, we have recently been dealing with, right, in terms of what to do about that particular situation.
So Dr. Ng, that is a very important comment that you made, and this is something that I also want us to think about, that it's not necessarily about abandoning schools, but sometimes we also have to, in a 20-year plan, look at the usability of facilities X number of years out. And that, as my grandmother would say, you're throwing good money after bad. And so that is where you sometimes have to have a conversation with the community to say that we've got to get out of the business of older buildings, or older facilities, and that's always going to be circumscribed by the historical context of that facility. So we really do have to be careful about that. But that is something that we also want to think about in the 20-year plan, is facility use, what is going beyond. So I can imagine a Washington will never get out of the business of a Washington. But if we think about a school, you know, but if you think about a school that was built in the 90s that may not have that context, then we could easily say, but we can repurpose that to the DMV of this place or that place. But certain places, they're going to always have that historical value. And that's something that I think a 20-year plan should also think about, is how the community is going to view that. So, great point.
Do you see, speaking of community, do you see this being similar to developing a strategic plan where, you know, we would go big and have community listening sessions and that kind of thing for something like this? Or would it be more conversations between our board and the commissioners and, you know, obviously the staff that y'all already got working together on the CIP?
You know, I'll let the staff speak to that.
And that might be a question for us.
Right.
Like, I understand that, but I'm just, what your initial thoughts were.
So I don't know the process that was used to develop the strategic plan. What I would say is that that is part of input that we want. I don't know if it would be something that would be that large, but it is about key stakeholders, making sure we get feedback from them, and having sessions of some sort where the community can give feedback. And so you all may have thought differently about what that external voice might look like, but it is absolutely something that we need. But I think we can have the discussion about how broad, how narrow we want that to be.
I was just thinking, for a lot of the needs we're talking about, they really are more inward-looking needs, right? Things we would use for professional development, things we need for transportation. And so from that point of view, getting feedback from Rock Quarry Road transportation staff about that site and that facility would be key, but you might not necessarily need as much information from neighbors on the front end. Right now, we're just trying to see what those, you know, like what the staff needs are, or like what the, you know, program needs might be, and some of that first. And then maybe after we put those needs together, taking that out for comment. That's how I was thinking.
It would likely look similar to what we do with student assignment, where you're not asking the public for what they want, but, you know, the general ideas that we're looking at, how would that possibly impact them to get their feedback? Because we still want to follow policy, but we also have our own agenda where there are certain things we need to do in this process. And so we'll just want to get feedback from the public as to, you know, through a thought exchange, through virtual or in-person meetings where we're just getting their feedback on how that may affect them, because money used in certain areas is not used in others, and so we want to get their feedback.
I think a big part of this too, you know, we just passed the sustainability policy, and that's not an overnight implementation. So how does that get implemented over 20 years? A couple other things, you know, as I said, I think there should be a lot of voices in this, risk management weighing in. Yes, Cecil, he has converted me to some degree. Just some.
Snap out of it.
Hopefully he hears this and appreciates that. You know, trailers has come before us. Security, you know, now that would not, maybe not be public facing, but what does security need over 20 years? Building that in.
A lot.
There you go.
I think that's going to be a common theme, is there are a lot of things we want and need, it's the funding for it.
Well, but I think by providing the big picture and showing what we want and need, that helps us build the case to say, here's, you know, here, to make the sale to our constituents, to our taxpayer base, to the General Assembly, you know, whomever we have to go get money from. Thoughts from you guys? What do you all think down there, that end of the table?
Well, I would, of course, say that this 20-year period is going to involve many different election cycles. So this document is a living document that's going to have to be adapted, you know, and changed, you know, throughout, you know, its life. And so we certainly aren't, you know, putting something, a hard line in the sand. Also, I'd say as far as the competing needs, tremendous competing needs. You already mentioned a couple of them. Life cycle is a huge one, you know, and that's going to be a big component of our expenses, you know, in the next 20 years.
Yeah.
It's a significant expense, and then we will see what is left over to see what we can do.
But I would not build the plan around the money aspect yet. I think what Mark was getting at was build it up and then we'll see what we can do. So I assume that you agree with that, but anyone else down there? Thoughts on, or in this room? Anyone with thoughts in this room?
I'll make my plug again. You know, we're not a municipal school system.
Right.
And so we are at the whim of our municipal partners and the growth that they're dealing with. And so we have to play catch up to them often. So
Yeah.
that's something that could adjust the plan over time.
And I will say another part of this for me is having all this information in one place. Like, we've had some great presentations, we've had some great real estate presentations and the maps, and we've had some, the trailer presentation, and you guys have started to lay out your plan, but then I have to go find it, and some of it's over here and some of it's over there, and to be able to have it all together, to be able to present and reference, I think is helpful from a governance.
A good thing for us is we have one vehicle in place to help share these discussions, and that's our core team, you know, with the county. And so, and we meet tomorrow, as a matter of fact. And so, and I'm sure many of them are watching this. So that's another opportunity for us to broaden our scope and our view of these things as we incorporate them into some of our higher level discussions. You know, we might get glean some good feedback that help us with direction as well.
Yeah. I think that'd be great. Anyone else in the room? Comments, concerns, questions, feedback? And we've talked about this a little bit, so I didn't expect to have as robust a conversation, but, you know, I think what would be a reasonable, hey, we're going to start bringing you things in 5 months, 6 months, 8 months. Like,
Can we discuss that at the February
Sure.
Facilities Committee?
or you guys discuss it and then.
It has been discussed some, but, you know, having this meeting today and getting feedback from board members will allow us to refine and focus better.
Okay. And I just really think getting an update in in a few months, here's what we've started to do, here's the information we're collecting, would be incredibly useful. And then, we're looking at January of 2026 or something like that, if it can go that fast even. And it might not go that fast. So, Ms. Rice?
If I could just share anything, the only thing that I would preferably like to have an update about is around our practices still with hiring our vendors, like who are we getting, because I know that that's a challenge. I'm just curious to where our update is around that. Are we still meeting the needs? Because we have a lot of work orders that still need to be taken care of, but we're getting vendors that are coming out, they're doing some work, but they're not completing the work, but we're paying these people to do work that's actually not being completed, and they're having to come right back out to the school, right back out, taking care of the same incident and the same issue. And there's also some conversations when I speak with my principals, because I only know what they need at the school-based level, and I leave that open for them to share so that I can share in the appropriate space. And so some comments were really about having a relationship, at least when they come into the building, when they're leaving, if they finished the work, communicate at least with the principal so the principal knows what's happened, so that they don't know if people have come or actually didn't show up or whatever, while students are still experiencing whatever deficit it is from the work order. And then the other part is, it's just like a home situation. If your HVAC system is broken and you've hired somebody to come out and fix it and you paid them, but it's not fixed, or they got to come right back out a few days later, how are we working around those practices with getting the best support that the facilities team needs? Are we collaborating with our interdepartments around what is Dr. Chavis's team? Are we collaborating with those folks to see if we are able to provide them some extra list of people that might be qualified to help as well, to help with the challenges that we're having? And so I just really would like to see how are we able to get the list down, the numbers down, and does the team here have the support that they need and that they're constantly asking for around people that can do the work? And we just want to provide extra resources within the district that we already have that may be able to share extra folks who have the wherewithal to do the work, but maybe have not tapped into that particular subgroup of folks. I hope I made sense.
Yeah, we want to utilize all the available talent that's out there.
Yeah.
And I think for this also, any improvements to, if there's any that needs to be done to the reporting side or the work order side as part of, hey, we want to make it a more robust system, I mean, now would be the time to kind of bring that forward like we're doing.
We could include that in the vision.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%.
We're still discussing a catchy acronym, we just haven't come up with it.
Oh, okay, I'm going to start working on it then. All right, that was good. And, like I said, this wasn't the first conversation, so I didn't expect there to be 45 minutes worth. So now, if I could get a motion to go into close to formulate plans relating to the prevention of school violence through the development of emergency plans under GS 143-318.11A8.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor to move into closed session, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. We are now in closed session.